Welcome back to Speaking Truth to Goodness, where we continue to explore the lives and motivations of those daring to change the world for the better. In today's episode, we're thrilled to introduce Timur Ender, a candidate for Portland City Council in District 1. Timur is not just a public servant, but a dedicated community builder, advocate, and would be the first Middle Eastern representative, embodying the diversity of the district he hopes to represent. Timur's journey is marked by his passionate advocacy for healthy communities, having managed numerous infrastructure projects aimed at improving the quality of life in East Portland's underinvested neighborhoods. From delivering sidewalks to planting street trees and installing curb ramps, his work has physically reshaped parts of our city to be more accessible and livable. His commitment extends beyond infrastructure. As a volunteer immigration lawyer, Timur has been a beacon of hope for families torn apart by violence, seeking safer futures in the United States. In this episode, we'll dive deep into Timur's unique background, exploring how his local activism intersects with global issues, like his stance on the situation in Palestine and his vision for Portland's role on the world stage. We'll discuss the evolving structure of our city government and what it means for the future of Portland's governance. As we unpack these topics, we'll also get personal with Timur, discussing his life as a parent and foster parent, giving us a fuller picture of the man behind the campaign. Stay tuned as we explore how Timur's experiences and policies could shape Portland. And don't forget to engage with us. Like, comment, and subscribe to catch all the insights from today's discussion and support us in highlighting the goodness in our rising leaders. Let's get started. Well, welcome, Timur.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Kind of conventional for an opening.
Yeah.
I think I need to be disruptive.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Were you named for the island?
Oh, no. I was named after a 14th century Ottoman ruler.
Oh, don't go to Bulgaria. They will not welcome you in Bulgaria. The Ottomans are not popular.
Oh, man. Yeah.
500 years of occupation at this.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's where I got my name.
Were you born in
I
the
was
U.S.?
born in Maryland, yes. Yeah. And I like my brother's name a lot, too, because his name is Keenan. And so his works with U.S. culture and Turkish culture, whereas mine is very much like Turkish culture.
Yeah, definitely don't bring that up in Bulgaria.
Yeah.
They still hold a grudge.
Okay.
And they know their history, unlike Americans.
Yeah.
Actually, no.
Jumping right into the occupation then. Yeah, how are you feeling about the campus protests, the things going on in Portland? We've also got the Nakba 76 protests coming up this weekend.
Yeah, I've been watching it. I haven't been down there. I have participated in walks and marches with some of my kids. And so my oldest child, who's 6, is like, I hate Palestine, because their only association with it is like walking, and they're like so tired. Like, I'm tired of Palestine. So So anyway, I think as a parent, it's important to expose them to these injustices. They may not understand what it is yet, but that I'm a believer that by exposing them and showing them that, one of the ways you can protest is by marching in the street. That we're not shielding them and trying to hide them or pretend it's not happening. Because we're raising the next generation, and so it's important that they have the skills to be able to navigate the world.
Absolutely.
So Patty knows my daughter, who started marching when she was 6. So it might work out well.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
She's a climate activist at a pretty high level.
Yeah, I'm curious how you're framing the situation going on to your kids. Like, how are you giving that to them in sort of like bite-sized chunks?
Sure. Okay, so they're 6. So the oldest one is 6. So I'm basically saying, there's something going on in the world that we don't agree with. And as a person, we can decide how we're going to react to that. And so we have a number of tools we can use. We can write letters. We can run for office. We can march in the street. We can donate money. We can talk to our friends. And so just helping them understand, or not even understand, maybe just expose them to how you can respond to something and how you can have, you control your future. Mm-hmm. And so kind of giving them an insight into the tools, knowing that, they're only 6. So there's only so much they're going to grasp. But, I mean, they said they hate Palestine because they're tired of walking. So they're going to know a few years later that they were, I remember Palestine. I marched in the middle of the street.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like that's going to be so huge when your kids are older. They're going to know what you did for them.
Sure. Yeah.
So when I talk to my kids, they say our growing up was difficult, which it was, some because of separation, but it was the 60s. It was pretty volatile. There was FBI and all this stuff. But they say, but you know what? Our lives are rich because we were exposed to all of these people and all of these ideas growing up, and it shaped who we are. So I have some experience that tells me that this is a really good thing that you're doing.
Yes.
You can't protect, in the current world, protecting our children is not an option. They have to know what the reality is. They have to be given tools, love, and support to survive.
Yeah. And protecting them might mean going to a march. Like, that might be a form of protection.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, my kids thought that the picnic was with placards and signs. They didn't realize you could just go to the park with sandwiches.
That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
Am I exposing my background?
No. Only in the best ways.
Too late.
Yeah,
I'm
we're on
sorry,
to you.
That one's out of the barn.
Yeah. I think the other thing, too, is by doing this, for me, it's natural. Like, I didn't feel a pressure to take a stand. Like, it was just being my campaign manager. I was like, I kind of feel obligated to say something. And so she was like, okay, then say something. And so we just put out just an Instagram post about this is where I stand on this issue. And it's there. It has a timestamp. People know when I put that statement out. And
Cool.
I think for some, it's, and there's people who say, I don't want to get involved in that, or that's not a local issue. But I think for me, it is an important issue because it's an issue for so many people, for people who have ties to the Middle East, for people who have mental connections or physical connections there. And by ignoring it or glossing it over, you're saying, I don't see you. And as someone hoping to represent a district that is very diverse, it is my way of saying, I see you and I feel your pain, and I acknowledge that this is something that you are going through because I'm going through. And so it just kind of signals that I'm someone who is able to empathize with communities of color and people who have a background from a different part of the world.
I think being able to understand the experience of immigration in a district as diverse as this one, whether it's Turkish or Sri Lanka, is a gift. And I wonder if that's been represented on city council before.
I don't think it has. And so I part of the reason I'm running is because I felt that there were a lot of things that weren't being represented. So I'm someone under the age of 35. I didn't feel the youth voice was really being represented. I'm someone who's a parent. I didn't feel the perspective of young parents was being represented. If you look at playgrounds that have not been maintained, playgrounds that don't have shade, bus stops that have only a pole and no sidewalk access or curb ramps to get there. And first-generation immigrants haven't been really represented on council. City employees have not been represented on council, so I'm proud to be a city employee of 6 years in the city of Portland. And so there was just a lot of things that I felt that I could bring perspective to.
I wish you lived in my district. Oh, wait, you do live in my district.
Yay!
But I'm serious.
Yeah,
This is the kind of voice that I want on city council, who actually knows what work is, what a concept, that there are working people in this community who are not represented by middle-class people who may mean well, but they don't know what the experience is. So I feel like the voice that you bring, and we're only 20 minutes into the podcast, is what we need. It's going to be a difficult transition. It's going to be very confusing. There's going to be a lot of negative energy to deal with. But my own belief is 2 years from now that we're going to have a government that represents the people of the city, which we've never had before. Citywide elections are bullshit. They're just fuck. Did I say fuck?
You can say fuck.
Fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
It just pisses me off. I mean, I'm still naive. I'm only 83. You'd think I would have gotten over that by now, but I haven't. It's like, and again, I worked with working people, auto workers, steel workers, for decades. So I know the power and brilliance of working people that gets denied and blocked at every turn. So nothing would make me happier than to have you representing me, City Council.
Thanks. That means a lot.
And it's not, if we pay attention only to climate, we'll lose. If we only pay attention to city government, we'll lose. We have to hold all those things at the same time. Not an easy task.
Yeah, and just going back to you talking about how, people have been saying, oh, this isn't a local issue, the issues going on with Palestine and Israel. I've gone to so many city council meetings now where people bring ceasefire testimonies, and I've heard them talk about all the reasons why it is local, talking about the Oregon-Israel Business Alliance is located in Portland. Israel is listed as one of Oregon's top 10 trade partners, export partners, and then also we have a lot of Palestinian American people here, and so I think that it is part of the role of even local city governments to be putting pressure on upper forms of government to make sure that we're representing our people and saying, hey, we really feel like we need to be taking a stance on this, and referring that up for further consideration and having those conversations in public view.
Yeah, and to add to that, the city council has a number of hats. And so one hat is procurement policy. Another hat is the city's investment portfolio. And we really can be looking at all of these things because I think taxpayers and voters should expect when they are giving their tax money to the city, it should be used in accordance with their values. And whether that is something completely unrelated, such as helping a black business owner upstart his construction firm so then he can chase larger projects and become a prime contractor. That was one thing the city used to do, the prime contractor development program. It doesn't do anymore. Or its investment portfolio or things like that. All of those things are just hats that the city wears that we should be cognizant of how our dollars are being used in a way that's in line with our values as a community.
Absolutely. As you're talking about the taxpayers getting to decide where some of that money gets spent, are you also signed on for participatory budgeting? Have you endorsed that?
I was one of the early endorsers of participatory budgeting. For me, it's a no-brainer.
Could you explain participatory budgeting for me?
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, so participatory budgeting is an effort that the charter committee, when they proposed all these changes in form of government, said, yes, we're going to do this. They put it to city council. City council ignored it. And so the proposal, just to be clear, was 2% of the city's discretionary funding. So the amount of money that can be used for anything. It's not regulated by, it has to be used for this or that. So 2% of the city's discretionary dollars, which comes out to about $15 million a year, can be decided by a group, decided by ordinary Portlanders, and then there's kind of like an oversight group. City Council did not move forward on that and did not put it to a vote, and so now that organization is collecting somewhere around 40,000 Portland signatures to basically refer it to the ballot in November. And so I'm one of many city council candidates who have endorsed this petition. And I'm actually a volunteer signature gatherer. And so I think one example we can kind of use of like a homegrown example of this is the East Portland in Motion plan. And so what that was is community members came together and said, my top priority is sidewalks on Powell Boulevard. And then it was a prioritized list. And then there was city staff helping them decide cost estimates. You want to do this? Here's how much it's going to cost. Just so community members could be like, okay, are we dealing in order of millions or tens of millions and things like that, so they can kind of have a rough cost estimate. And so that became, in 2012, a prioritized list. And then at that point, it was great because elected officials kind of had their marching orders. We're going to fight for us. We're going to get the state legislator to help us with sidewalks on Powell, and that got funded to the tune of over $20 million. And then city council, they aligned the Fixing Our Streets program and other city revenue streams to achieve those goals. And so participatory budgeting is kind of similar in the sense that anyone can submit an idea. They can say, I want AC in my child's school. I want a trail between here and here. And then city staff are there to help cost estimate all of these things. And then there's an oversight group that will kind of provide oversight and have some guidance around then. And then what happens is people are allowed to vote. And this is not, the idea is it's way more inclusive and opens the door for 150,000 more Portlanders to vote, because it's not the threshold of U.S. elections. You have to be 18 years old and a U.S. citizen to vote. It allows kids to vote. It allows non-citizens to vote. And so that way everyone who's actually living in this community has a say in how their built environment looks, what projects are funded, and they're having anyone can submit, and then anyone can vote. And hopefully, best practices, they're making that vote as accessible as possible, whether that's voting online, etc. So that all program is going to be developed if they get enough signatures, and if it passes on the ballot, then that's going to be happening basically in 2025.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
the participatory is referencing all the people.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and other cities that have done this, there are many other cities who have already done this, and what they see is that you have a significantly higher voter participation rate because they are excited that they get to see exactly how the tax dollars are spent. And so it goes up proportionally. So there's kind of like a spectrum between 2% of the discretionary budget to 10% of the discretionary budget, and the voter turnout increases dramatically as you go up the percentages too.
Because people can see in a lot of cities a lot of things that are popular are like playgrounds, and so that will be something that's funded. And one difference for Portland is what I've learned from some of the organizers around this effort is a lot of other cities, it's purely capital or construction, so it has to be parks, it has to be transportation. For us, there's no restrictions like that. It's discretionary budget, so it can be, hey, I want a planning effort for this district of how we're going to do multimodal improvements. And so it could literally just be, I'm going to do a planning effort. I'm not going to build anything. But then that can, as you know, in city government, the plan is the first step, because then you can chase money and align funding sources and things like that afterwards. So long story short, it's a little bit more flexible than the way other cities have done participatory budgeting.
Gotcha. I was going to say, I find myself really drawn to the work that you've done with the city of actually getting in physical pieces that are visible to the people you're serving. And I feel like that is a strong point about what you've done. I wonder if you have something in your background. We didn't really cover that exactly, but if we want to circle back to that and see just like what you would like to share about your background that got you to here.
I would say it's kind of infectious, because you're like, I can do this. And so it started with Better Naito, where we kind of reformed Naito into that biking trail along the waterfront, and I was like, wow, this is like when you have that power to address the built environment, and it's like infectious. You're like, okay, I want to keep doing this, because it's like you see the proof in the pudding. For me, it was, I would say in 2011, I was at NC State University in North Carolina, and I would ride my bike around the city in these like off-street trails. And that's kind of how I'd clear my brain. And then I would see areas of the city that were underinvested in, did not have the same level of tree canopy, street lighting, sidewalks. And this often occurs in most cities. And as a result, the people living in those parts of town often have a life expectancy 5 to 20 years lower than the rest of the city. That's due to underinvestment, it's due to traffic crashes, it's due to gun violence, it's due to lack of tree canopy. So all of these things, and then at the same time I was interning at the district attorney's office there, and I was seeing how basically people were coming in kind of almost as an assembly line. What did you do, and what's your past criminal record? Okay, you fit into this box, here's your sentence of X amount of years in prison. And so it really felt like there was just like, and climate change started to become a bigger issue. And then I was like, okay, how do we get upstream to all of these issues where, true public safety, great parks, and then it all goes back to local government of having great places to live, having accessible sidewalks, safe routes to school, tree canopy, great public spaces and things like that. And so that was kind of my thing of like, I knew I wanted to be in local government. I knew I wanted to do transportation stuff. Because to me, it's like you're going upstream to a lot of these issues that, by the time someone commits a crime, it's too late. Like you're kind of handcuffed to spending so much money on addressing these, on the downstream effect of these. And so I felt like this is kind of where I belonged.
So this is maybe off script, but how do you think we as people, as a community, as a city, all the cities, find ourselves in a place where we've got parts of the city that are nice for people and parts that aren't, and it's hurting them? How'd we get there? How'd we let that happen?
Yeah, that's a deep question.
I know, I'm sorry.
It's a deep question. You don't need to apologize. But I think, part of it is just form of government. There hasn't been any accountability. No one has had to lose their jobs because people are dying in traffic crashes in East Portland. No one has lost their jobs because of high gun violence in East Portland. And you haven't had people representing East Portland who have had to breathe the air, who have had to wait on a bus stop with no shelter and no shade. You haven't had people who are accountable to infrequent transit. And when you don't have that political accountability, then there's no incentive for things to get done. One of the reasons I'm running for office is because I want to be accountable to life expectancy and health outcomes in my community. So this is the first time that's going to be possible because the East Portland district is very much aligned with where we see a 10-year lower life expectancy. And that accountability that's how I'm going to see that's how I define success for myself is have we increased life expectancy in East Portland and have we reduced the disparity in health outcomes between people living east of 82nd Avenue and west of 82nd Avenue.
So we're talking about accountability in city government, but now if we're thinking about neighborhood organizations, what kinds of neighborhood organizations are kind of feeders for this way of looking at local government? So that would be one of the things I would want to understand if I were running for office, posthumously, apparently, but no, I'm sorry. So I've done a fair amount of community organizing. I've seen good projects rise and fall. I haven't seen these projects connected in a way that makes them sustainable and that then are an engine to drive the agenda you're talking about. Any thoughts on that?
So one of the things we did in 2017 was this thing called the Big Jump. And it was looking at the Gateway District, and the goal was kind of to increase bike ridership. So we got a national grant, and it was really the first time the city was looking at biking and walking infrastructure in like a cohesive network design, not just arterials and corridors. And we had focus groups, so we interviewed people. What are your barriers to walking and biking? Specific focus on business owners and immigrants and refugees. And then we flew people to conferences. That was part of the technical assistance that was offered through this grant. And really, one of the things we also did was had Sunday Parkways move to Gateway for the first time in 2018, which is, for people who aren't aware, Sunday Parkways is the 6-mile biking and walking loop where streets are closed to cars and open to people walking and biking. And so that was kind of a nice effort that I was privileged to be a part of in terms of aligning infrastructure with encouragement and other opportunities.
So this ties into something we talked about a little bit last time we were together, which is mutual assistance. I feel that people have been disempowered by the existing system at every level, not just the local level. And that part of, for our climate agenda, is sort of the reactivation of communities so we can have the conversations we need to have. Right now, it's not a fertile field to go out and say, "Hi, I want to talk to you about climate change." Lock. So, and again, I sometimes come up with phrases. So I've taken the one that we're all familiar with, the first urgency of now, and added the fierce urgency of the long haul. So we have to be working to build that greater possibility for community participation. Because right now, people don't feel that they're empowered to do that. So it's a big, complex task, but I actually believe that, having worked with working people for a long time, you create an opportunity for change, and they'll rise to that occasion. So in some ways, I would see your job as being a liaison between these healthy things growing in communities and the structures that need to respond to those.
Yes, not a liaison, but an active
Good.
fertilizer.
Absolutely.
You have to cultivate that. You have to fund it. You have to do all of those things, because I want to be in a position where I'm never having to guess where my community is on an issue. Make it clear, whether it's participatory budgeting, East Portland in Motion, those things where you have those community planning processes. And then my job as a city commissioner is then to fight for those resources, making sure they're delivered in a timely fashion and that they're having a real impact on people's lives. So then, and that ultimately leads to a positive cycle of, okay, I wanted this, it actually happened. I'm having more trust that things can actually work.
Right. Yeah.
And then I'm now more engaged and helping figure out the next thing.
Hands waving, hands waving.
Yeah, I wanted to pull back in what you talked about like neighborhood organizations, neighborhood associations, because even with 12 people on city council, which is a lot more than 4, there's still 650,000 people in the city. So that doesn't make us very accessible, even to just in our district. That's still over 100,000 people.
Yes.
Or, yeah. Almost, yeah. And so the neighborhood associations, I think, are fairly unique to Portland, or there's not that many cities that have that kind of neighborhood association structure. And as I've been talking to people about them, they get them confused with HOAs, and it's a very different situation. So, yeah, so the neighborhood associations are also in a really interesting moment right now, because with the district organization, they got split into 4 parts, and there's more neighborhood associations in somewhat wealthier districts of Portland than there are in other districts of Portland, even though there's the same number of people. Right. And so now those neighborhood associations, which are required to have their own insurance and all their own bank accounts and all this, like, have less funding, because in, for instance, District 4, there's, I think, 33 neighborhood associations that are splitting the same amount of funding as a different district that has maybe 14. Okay. And so there's this tension that's happening, even because each neighborhood, it's unique, and there's unique features, and there might be reasons why it has its own neighborhood association, even if it has fewer people or less density. But there's all these like really interesting intersections of issues as we're building these neighborhood associations, and then they're just under-supported. It's not a paid position. So obviously it's going to be taken up by people who are a little bit better off and have more time on their hands, and so it's not as participatory as it should be. But I really like the idea of having these sort of micro government structures so people have an avenue, and then the neighborhood association leaders can then advocate on their behalf to the city council, and we have this this nested scale situation going on.
Well, it just so happens that I have run a neighborhood association in Portland, albeit a long time ago. But the problem with neighborhood associations is it's like the form of Portland city government. People who have more money, more vested interest in property dominate. That was less true because this was like in 1975. That was a long time ago. So democratizing neighborhood associations also, or fertilizing. I like catalyst fertilizer. You know, it's got a smell and catalyst. Well, some catalysts too. Anyway, so I'm excited. Here's what excites me. We're having a conversation that understands head bone connected to the neck bone connected to the shoulder bone. It's all connected. So we can't just work on one piece and expect change. So what city council can do, clearly, is encourage that change process in the neighborhoods. So, and again, that question of you want to represent your district, it's a big district with a lot of different people with different interests. How do you even find out in a real way? I mean, there are people who will answer the surveys. Those aren't the people you need to be talking to. It's the people who are alienated from those structures. When we were working with plant closures, training auto workers, steel workers, any kind of workers to be peer advocates for each other when a plant closes. Long story. What we found was when a plant closes, a third of the people were planning to get a different job anyway. A third of the people just need information. A third of the people will suffer unless someone gives them support. So all the efforts need to be put into that third. So we shouldn't take people with less need and give them more resource. So it's balancing that equation. Not a simple thing at all.
Definitely.
But if you take the perspective of, I want to represent the people in this district, that means going to the people in the district. And that means finding the people who are hard to find. Not the ones who look at the flyer and say, well, I'll show up for a meeting. No. It's that other part. Does it happen overnight? No. So, yeah, after you get elected, we can talk.
Sounds good. I'll be here.
I'll make an appointment.
Yeah. We were talking on the elevator just how exciting it is that in the Portland City Council history or city government history, there's only been 2 city commissioners who have lived east of 82nd Avenue. And then on day 1 of the new form of government, there'll be more representation for East Portland than there ever has been. So that's going to be really exciting.
That is pretty amazing.
Little baby steps at a time. We'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get there. It just takes time.
Yeah. But I think I just shout out to all the people who laid the groundwork for this, who worked on charter reform. I am a product of those systems level changes. I would not run if there was an incumbent. I wouldn't run if there wasn't small donor election program. I wouldn't run if there were not districts. I wouldn't run if I was the only person that could win. So all of these things that allow multi-member districts, that allow campaigns to be done with a team and you're not kind of slamming each other down, that things that help reduce the impact of dirty money in politics. So I'm a product of all those. So I owe a debt of gratitude to everyone who worked on charter reform to make basically everyday Portlanders like me be able to run for city council and have a really strong campaign in doing that. So,
Absolutely.
I think we need to have a Your Vote Matters campaign. Because I think for a long time people haven't felt like their vote mattered. But I think that would be an important campaign to do. Now, your vote matters.
Yeah. And I'll just say, I guess I love telling my people this, is basically you can only vote for people in your district. So but there will be 9 other people on council who will be affecting city policy, which means the people outside of your district will have more of a say in city policy than the people in your district. And you cannot vote for them with your ballot, but you can vote for them with your dollar. With the small donor elections program, if you donate 5 or 20, you're voting with your dollar, because every single candidate in this race is trying to get to 250 Portland donors or 750 Portland donors to get to the next tier of matching funds to get the $40,000 from the city. And that is a way for people to vote. And as a candidate, one of the things that's been a huge surprise for me is in a city of 600,000 people, how hard it is to get 750 people to give you $5. It's just crazy. Goodness. It's like you think. And so back to what you're saying is like, vote with your dollar. I mean, don't just wait till November. The way this system is set up is for you to have a biggest impact is before the election with your $5, maybe has more of an impact than your ballot. Wow. So just keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think that is? Why do you think people are gripping their dollars so hard?
I just... Maybe,
It's rough out there.
Yeah.
It's really rough out there.
Yeah.
And I guess just to add a little bit of perspective to this whole lens.
Yeah.
So, not everybody.
That's true.
For instance, I'm not asking for money in that way. I am part of the small donor election program, but only because it was the only way to file before the official filing date, which isn't until June 5th. But yeah, no, I really appreciate what you're saying, and I do think that the small donor election program is really valuable. And it's interesting because with the new form of government where it really does encourage a lot of people to run, it's great, except that the city allots for everyone who registers with the small donor election program $100,000 for, I think it might even be $125,000 that they set aside for each candidate who registers with the program. That those funds get tied up, and not every candidate is going to succeed in getting their 250 donors to match those funds, but the funds still have to be set aside. So there's all of this money that's tied up right now, because there's I think almost 70 candidates running for city council, plus the mayoral candidates are also able to file for small donor elections. So as I've been thinking about it, and also thinking about how much I deeply want money out of politics entirely, and maybe this is a bigger scope thing than what I could accomplish in 2 years on a city council term, but thinking about, okay, what if we did this a little bit differently? What if we had candidates show their community support by getting a certain number of signatures or whatever makes sense, and then we just say, okay, everybody gets the same amount of city funds. You've shown your support, here's your $30,000. And that is not for your campaign exactly. That's for you to support yourself for the year so that you can successfully campaign and go to community events and show up at podcasts and do TV interviews, and you don't have to worry about working your full-time job. So you can just focus on running this campaign. I think it would honestly save the city money to just say everybody gets the same amount. And then you don't have to spend all your time calling people or going door to door asking for money. You just get to be with the community. You get to volunteer. You get to go and be a force for good. and everyone has the same amount of money. So then you really get to see who's doing the most with the money they have. So, I don't know. Just an idea to throw out there.
People over profits. I'm not sure.
I know. Very unpopular idea, right?
Yeah. Some people would call you a visionary rascal.
Oh, yeah. I'll take it.
Radical comes to mind.
This is the level of thinking. And, we've talked about the fact that just having you there to raise the issue of climate and its connection between local, that conversation is taking place that wouldn't take place if you weren't in this campaign.
Yeah, in certain aspects,
all of these ideas. And I think you said something that's important to me, which is it's not winner take all. It's not everybody has to protect them, so you can work collaboratively with people. And I think beyond even knowing that only 3 people can win, do you feel like the spirit of being collaborative is taking hold, and that people understand that there's this, it's not a very inspiring poster, but it's everybody knows more than anybody. All of us together have this wealth of knowledge that if it's shared, strengthens all of us and the city. I mean, so these are seeds, but they're very important seeds.
Yeah.
And these conversations would not be taking place under the old system
Yeah.
at all.
And this is a form of government that rewards people working together, because obviously as a candidate I want people to rank me as their first choice and then rank someone else as their second choice. But if I can kind of form alliances, someone else might say vote for me first but then vote for Timur second. So I want to be friends with people who my values are aligned with, because I may not get off the bat the number of first choice votes I need to win. And so people like me may be relying on some of those third, fourth, fifth, sixth choices. So public service announcement, when you get your ballot, make sure you rank all 6 of your choices, because that is the most likely way you will see your values reflected on who's representing you.
What you just did is a really important piece of what we're trying to do with this, because we realize there's a huge education piece that's going to be missing for the city, at least this first time through. Is there something more that you could say to encapsulate that, to help people understand what the heck is happening here and what they need to pay attention to?
Yeah. Rose City Reform is a great resource, candidate tracker. So look at that. It tells you what pledges people have signed. It tells you how much people have raised. It tells you whether they've support the participatory budgeting, whether they've signed the no police money pledge. And you can kind of just get a general sense of these things. And then so take it upon yourself. One exercise people can do is imagine your ideal city council of 13 people, and then go donate $5 to each of those people. And Oregon has Oregon political tax credit, which is if you make under $75,000 a year, you basically you can donate up to $50 and then get that $50 back when you file your taxes. So it's basically a free $50, use it or lose it, to donate to whoever you want. So
yeah, and then just to add to the voter education piece, so the part of the charter reform did include a large amount of money for voter education, which they're really trying to focus on the BIPOC community and people who have been underrepresented, to make sure that they fully understand the voting system that we have. But yes, you'll get to vote for your top 6. And then, so since there's 3 winners, someone only needs 25% of the vote plus 1 to win. And once somebody gets that, then all of their surplus votes then go to the second choice. So if you voted for someone who is very popular and they get a surplus of votes, then those votes get transferred to their second choice. And it's proportionally. So basically, like, whatever percentage of the votes that the first person was in surplus of then gets transferred to the second choice for all of those voters. And so on and so forth until you have 3 winners, unless nobody gets 25% of the vote, and then you start eliminating the people who have the least number of votes, and their second choice, third choice, fourth choice, fifth choice, sixth choice, then get those votes instead. And so it really gives us the best chance to have a truly representative government in terms of people have voted for their values, and those are actually showing up in better ways, because with a situation where you only get to vote for one, you start to talk about, like, oh, I threw my vote away if I voted for someone who is maybe less popular. That's not the case with ranked choice voting in almost all statistical outcomes.
You get to vote with your conscience.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
How do we get people to trust local government? Because they don't.
Or to think their voice matters, to care enough to take the time to go to the website you mentioned and really try to dig into these things. Because I would venture a guess that the great majority of Portlanders are just kind of like, woo, right over the top of their head, because they're just fucking trying to do life.
Yeah.
Right? So how do we put things in front of them in a way that they can grab onto and be like, oh my gosh, hope for things to get better?
Yeah. Well, so if I could just respond to that too. So the county has the voters pamphlet, which not every county has. So I think that's a really good step forward in getting the information in front of the people. And that's also a really good version of everybody gets the same amount of space. And so you can't pay for more space, right? So it's a really great opportunity for someone to, write about themselves and their values and their endorsements or whatever they want to throw on there and to use that. So we already have that, which is a great way for people to get engaged. But as I've been on TikTok and on social media asking people like, what do you, if you 100% align with a candidate and you don't know them yet, how would you like to meet them? And a lot of people said, I want to see them out in a protest. I want to see them out at a coffee meet and greet. I want to see them out doing community service. I want to see them really involved. And so I think that's the way. I don't think you have to come at it from an angle of you need to trust the government more.
That might not work.
Right? You have to come at it from, hey, I deeply care and I'm going to continue to care whether or not I'm elected. And here's how I'm demonstrating that.
Well, what I think is so important about what you're bringing to the table, Timur, is that you've actually done that. You can be like, see those curbs and the shade trees that went in?
Yeah.
Like, I'm working on that for you.
Yeah.
And that's fucking huge.
Yeah, that's huge.
Right? I guess the hardest part is getting the word out to everyone so they can associate those good things they've noticed with the work that
That's
you've
true.
done and want to continue to do in this role.
Which is hard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is hard because you're battling a lot. I mean, even with, luckily, the Fixing Our Streets program that passed in the first time was 2015 with 52% of the vote, almost did not pass. And then in the next round, 4 years later, it passed with 77% of the vote. So people were able to see that their tax dollars, their gas tax dollars, going to things like paving and curb ramps and street trees and sidewalks, and they had trust in the program, and that is what allowed it to be successfully renewed by voters. And then it's up for re-election again right now as people have their ballots in front of them. Yeah, but you have to tell that story. You can't trust anyone else to tell it. You have to affirmatively. Sometimes it's better if you don't tell it, but other people tell it. So, I'm most recently for the past few years I've been on the board of Oregon Walks, which is a nonprofit focused on pedestrian safety and kind of transportation justice and intersectional lens to traffic safety, and it's been great to see that organization really blossom and bring attention to some of these kind of street level issues. And Oregon Walks was part of a coalition that helped facilitate the jurisdictional transfer of 82nd Avenue from state ownership to local control. And that makes a huge difference when the city's the one setting speed limits, signal timing, bus shelters, crosswalks, and things like that, because an urban arterial, also known as an orphan highway for state DOTs, is just the state DOT is so focused on interstate highways and rural roads that it's things that are so important to City of Portland people are just left on the back burner. And the other benefit was they did it right this time with 82nd. So, for example, Powell, what they did was the state's going to design it to their own standards, and then when it's done, it's like, here you go, City of Portland. Now we're going to do the jurisdictional transfer, but everything's designed to the state standards, which is not ideal. And with 82nd Avenue, they did it right, which is they gave the money to the city, and then the city is now designing it with their standards. And so that's a huge win for people who live along 82nd Avenue, families who are navigating that to go to school, huge for people riding transit, and just a lot of the organizations that were involved in that.
So it sounds like the closer and closer we can get the money and the decisions
Yes.
to the hands of the people,
Yes.
the better we're going to be.
Which is exactly what participatory budgeting is seeking to do.
Heck, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Love it.
yeah. I can talk about foster parenting if y'all want to go there.
please.
Sure.
I'd love to
Yeah,
hear about
it's been a fun ride. So we were not in the process of trying to be a foster parent, and we were actually in the process of adopting because that was kind of our kind of bigger life family goal. And so what happened was we got a call saying, okay, you're approved. By the way, we have a ton of kids, and we need a home for one of them. Would you be open to fostering? And luckily, I had someone who has been involved with DHS who knew that was going to happen. He's like, DHS is desperate, and as soon as they certify you, they will ask if you want a child. So luckily, I knew it was coming. And so anyway, we basically decided to say yes. And yeah, it's been interesting. It's been a lot to navigate. And one of the things, so we now have this child living with us. He's 2.5 years old. And it's been really interesting because, so for example, I'll just kind of say the numbers out loud just to demystify the process. A foster family will receive $900 a month to care for a child. Because our child has special needs, it is basically $500 more, so $1,400. And then there's also a $375 per month child care reimbursement, so roughly $1,700 a month. And then to put this child into full-time child care is like $2,200 a month. And I'm just like, oh man. And so it's just like a few things, you know, I feel like we're setting people up for failure. And then like, how can I recommend being a foster parent when all of a sudden you have to dish out $500 a month of your own money to childcare, let alone all the other expenses of food, et cetera, which is the money is also intended for. And so now it's just made me just more appreciative of all the foster parents and a stronger advocate for programs like ERDC, employment-related daycare at the state level. But the other challenge I've noticed too is a lot of these programs are still income-based, and it's based on our income, when I feel like our income should have no say in how this works. It should be, do you have a foster child? And that status is what should allow the child to receive the services that they need. And it's navigating all of this is like, some programs, it's based on the status of the foster child. For other programs, it's based on our income. And it's been so weird to navigate all this. And so luckily we're in a point of transition. Hopefully he'll be at a facility, thanks to Albina Head Start, that is more able to address this kid's developmental needs. And the benefit of that is it's free for us. And so now we're able to use the money from the state to kind of more strategically help this child. So anyway, it's been a great process. And just shout out to my kids, which, I mean, they've just been like, I mean, if it was me, I'd feel like, why is this kid here? Who are they? And then my kid's like, ooh, a playmate that gets to live with us. And they're just like so excited about it. And so it's been kind of neat just kind of just being in this journey.
It's almost as if kids had their shit together more than adults. Just saying.
Yeah.
How many kids do you have?
So 3 total right now.
Okay,
So
including the foster.
Including the foster, yeah.
Great.
So 6, 3.5, and 2.5, yeah. And so, yeah, it's been a wild ride and just interesting to see a whole side of the foster care system, how these services relate, and just things I wasn't exposed to because my kids were not neurodivergent and did not have any kind of developmental delays or anything like that. And so now I'm like looking at everything. First, you look at everything differently when you're a parent, things like curb ramps and shade and public transit. But now you're like taking it a whole nother level with a special needs child too. Yeah. So it's just, anyways, I'm glad we're doing it. But it's like, if I could change my life, I would not be running for office and doing foster parenting the same year. That's one thing I would, it's kind of a lot. And the other thing I'll say too is it's such a long election cycle. So I personally started my campaign August of 2023. There's no primary. So you're kind of going from, it's basically 16 months from August till November of the next year. And in the meantime, you have the privilege of meeting candidates like you, Chad Likens running in Southwest, and just Reverend Nat, just other great candidates. And when there's kind of this community of because it's hard to explain and you're kind of going through a lot, and it's a massive, quick growth development too of just like building confidence, public speaking, fundraising, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just been wild because I feel like some of these people I barely know, yet we're like lifelong friends. Because it's like, you know, they're going through the same thing, and they're doing a great job. You know their values, and so anyway, I'm so glad I'm running because it's been like such a great community of people. And the other thing too is like we're all running for Portland, and one of the reasons I ran was I didn't feel like there would be 3 people on running from East Portland that would reflect my values. And if you look at the things like Palestine and signing on to ceasefire and things like that, I am literally one of only 3. And so that has been a kind of, I guess, reaffirmation that I am in the right space, because I want voters to, ideally you want voters to have all 6 people who reflect their values, but minimum 3. Right. And so I'm so glad that, because I was kind of someone on the fence of like, okay, I'm sure there's other great people that are going to run, and then it literally came down to there's no reason not to do it. And it's such a privilege because not everyone can align their life to spend 15 months running for office. And if that's something you can do, then just by running, you're serving your community. Is you're giving voters the option of, because a lot of ballots and things, there's people are running unopposed, and so when you take the step to run for office, you're giving voters an option, and that is a huge thing that you're doing for your community, win or lose, is you're giving voters a choice in deciding which way they want to go. And voting is like transit, you know, it's not going to get you to your final destination, but you get to decide, am I going north or am I going east?
Okay, I'm going to be looking for all kinds of transit metaphors from you as this goes forward. Yes.
Beautiful. Yeah, and just to speak to that collaboration piece, it is really remarkable when you show up at all of these events and you see the same people over and over again, and you do start to get really excited when you see like your quote-unquote competitors. You're like, oh, how are you? How are your kids? And it's like totally and completely genuine, and I had no idea this would happen. I just kind of assumed that it would be all very catty, but no, we're so excited to hear about each other's lives, and it's really quite funny. But what I've been thinking about is with 70 people running, and each of them coming from a really unique perspective with a community behind them, then whether or not we get elected, those 70 people, those 70 community leaders all now know each other, and we can be making change whether or not we're on the city government. So I'm really excited for not only like seeing what the actual council shapes out to be, but also what kind of collaborations happen post-election that among those community members.
I get excited. It's really hard not to get excited when really healthy things happen. And this is a healthy process. Whatever happens, and whether other forces manage to screw it up, fine. We have to take a step. It goes back to the famous thing, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And we can't get from where we are to wherever we want to go without that first step. This is more than a first step. This is like your first water break, you know, in the marathon. And again, I'm on fire with the importance of the relationships that get built and maintained over time. It can't be just transactional. We're together here because we're in a shared transaction. No, we're here in a transformational process together. And it starts with small things like street trees and, you know, safe places to walk and schools that actually work and all that. But that truth is so important. And I think discouragement is an enemy to everything we're talking about. People are used to being attacked. They're used to being ignored. They're not used to being appreciated. So it seems like such a little thing, but my experience tells me it's what we all want to happen. So this whole process, this whole podcast process, rescues me from oblivion. I can't drive, I can't walk, I can't protest, I can't even do my photography because I fall over. But I can give all the encouragement that I can give based on lots of experience. So it's not empty. This comes out of long struggles over decades. It really gives me joy to be part of this conversation. And I feel so much more hopeful than when we started hour ago. something
Yeah.
like that.
Agreed.
And one of the things I think about too is what does it look like 4 years from now for all of the other candidates? Because my hunch is that sure, 13 people are going to get on city council, but for all of the other 70 people who are running, I'm sure they'll end up on the PCC board or the TriMet board. Maybe they're leading TriMet. Maybe they're the top person at Metro. Like, because people have seen that they've put themselves out there in a very public way in a time of political chaos, and people they've stood on what their values are, so people know their values. And so if I get elected on city council, I'm going to be fighting for all the people, other candidates who either I endorsed or I know, like, hey, how do we get you on the TriMet board? How do we get you in these other governmental positions so that we can leverage your talent and your drive and your inertia to keep kind of moving progress in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. So I think you see something about how the world works that I've never seen. Now, just this much background on me. I grew up in a doomsday cult, although I was in public school, so it was like this weird dual life.
Okay.
But I took that upbringing and have found myself as an adult pretty often feeling like us humans are good and we're trapped in the systems we built that got corrupted. And I stand by that. I still think that's true, but I'm starting to come to new ideas, and you're adding to this, that the people are good, but the people do make up the systems. And so as we are connecting with each other, as we do real things that really help people, and we kind of unfuck that corruption a little bit, it's giving me hope that our systems change, and we don't have to be angry at our systems getting in our way necessarily in the same way that I have found myself often. So do you have anything to add about how, because you seem to be able to just like connect with people and get how cool people in different positions like actually changes things, and that's a place that I have lacked for hope.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So my responses and thoughts as you're saying all this is, I went to law school. I don't know I would change it, but I kind of also wish I got a degree in public health, because that is a huge lens great lens in how to view the world. So for 2 years, I served on the Multnomah County Public Health Advisory Board. And it was kind of like a crash course in graduate school in public health. And one of the things we did during the height of the pandemic was say police violence is a public health issue. And that was so important because we were able to see, and just my research, because I led the draft of this resolution, was that policy affects police violence. So areas that don't have enough tree canopy or other kind of neighborhood supports or quality schools. So basically, as we think of gun violence, police violence is part of that gun violence. And so I am not an expert in public health, but it was a great lens and a venue for me to learn more about these things. And these systems level things. And so
public health is an incredible arena for change. I just don't think people give it much thought. Preventing a problem before you have to throw $100,000 at it to fix it, that's a pretty good investment.
Yeah. I've been learning a lot about bioregionalism and sort of organizing around specific landscape features and watersheds and what that looks like in terms of restorative justice. And as you're talking about the systems, I think a lot of the corruption that happens in systems happens because of directionality. So if there's, say, investors that are outside of a small community who say, oh, we'll give you money for your community project, but in 5 years you have to give it back and then some, that creates sort of an extractive system where the flow is always toward the outside. There's only growth on the outside. Whereas if you have a community where the investors are inside the community and they say, hey, I really care about this park next to my house and I'm going to donate money to that and not expect anything back, or not expect anything back for a longer period of time, then you have more of a community flow within the system. And so it's like we have these systems, and it's just really looking at what are the flows, what are the connections, what are the nodes, who are the players, and are there extractive players in the system that are taking away from the overall community resources that we're pooling together.
Yes, there are.
One quick example is at the northwest corner of 122nd and Market, there is the Community Investment Trust. And that allows anyone living in the 4 zip codes of East Portland to invest and basically be a property owner in this basically strip mall. And there's been a lot of immigrant-owned businesses and things like that. And those tenants are more likely to stay there long-term. The people who, in order to become an investor, you have to take a financial training class, and there's a lot of data around if you're investing, then you're more likely to be able to, you're more likely to vote and be civically engaged in other ways. And so it is a great model of community ownership over property. Like I said, you can only be a part of it if you're in 4 zip codes, and it's called the Community Investment Trust, and it was something developed by Mercy Corps, and they're kind of expanding to 10 other cities. But it has great businesses in there just in general that people can visit. So
yeah, it's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I love all these practical examples, and like that for me is like the heart of Portland, is that we are so experimental. We're not afraid to try things, and I think we can really become a model of experimentation, not only in government but also in environmental policies and things like that. And I would just really like to see Portland double down on its weirdness in that way.
Yeah, and that's a little bit how Better Naito came to light, which is the downtown waterfront. It was for walking and biking. It was basically for truck loading for the festivals. And we said, hey, how about it's trucks but also walking and biking? And the way the city had it was like the trucks have to be out of there for rush hour. And so the only thing we changed was allowing the loading zone to stay up during rush hour. And that's what made it a 24-hour biking and walking and loading zone for 2 weeks. And what that allowed us to see was that experimental street design was a third of the people commuting northbound were actually on bike, not on car. And yet bikes had gotten a fifth of the street space. And so that experiment essentially allowed us to see that Naito was actually the spinal cord of the downtown bikeway network. And then we did it again. We did it with better materials. Finally, the city took the step of putting up the cones for the summer. And so now the city was in the process of being the experimenter. And then finally, a couple of years ago, they made it permanent with the green paint and things like that. So that's a process where it was totally community initiated, and then it became institutionalized. Mm-hmm. And then the city can do things that the community can't. It can fill potholes. It can write parking tickets to people who are in there who shouldn't be, and other things. So just that one example of a community initiated thing becoming institutionalized through permitting of all things.
Nice.
That is good learning for me.
Yeah. Permitting and zoning, there's some really juicy stuff there. For sure.
Okay, one last thing.
Yeah, no, go for it. Yes, I love this.
Single stair reform. Okay, and so I'm new to this, but basically the idea around this is a number of cities, I think including Seattle, have updated their building codes to allow single stairs in apartment buildings instead of 2. And you address the fire safety component through firewalls and things like that. But going down to 1 set of stairs instead of 2 allows the cost to build to go down significantly. It reduces the cost of living and ownership and rent of that unit. It allows potentially to go higher. So it is one zoning related policy lever that can be used to increase density and reduce cost of building. So if we want to get super wonky, I am pro single stair reform.
So when you're saying single stair, like single stairway?
Yes. Like a single, because I think, like, for example, buildings have to have often 2 stairways. And so this is saying you can change your building code. And there's best practices, right, around fire safety, et cetera, et cetera. Yes. Maybe because you're going down to 1 stairway, you need more density of sprinklers, for example, whatever.
Okay.
But there's ways to do it that then the point is by going down to 1 stair, you're significantly reducing the cost to build.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, very cool.
So,
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that you're there.
Yeah, I'm proud to be a yes in my backyard candidate.
Yes.
So I don't want to break the flow, but I also don't want to not have the conversation about your support for Palestine and what the basis of it is and how you've incorporated that into your campaign. Having acknowledged that I think for immigrant communities, the issue of how communities of color are treated wherever they are is a really critical issue, and I'm really glad you've done that. But so I would like to have you talk a little bit more about your thinking, how it came about, and what outcome you'd like to see from it.
Sure. Yeah, I guess kind of going back, I would just say it came about organically of like me feeling like I had to get something off my chest and just be, I didn't really feel comfortable staying silent. And so I just felt like I needed to say where I stood on this issue at that point in time. And I did. I attended marches with my kids. And then, going forward, I'm not completely sure what the whole policy levers are, but I would just kind of revert back to, how are we investing our dollars? How are we procuring resources and things like that? So that's kind of where my mind goes of like going forward.
So how then do you explain the sort of complex politics of what's going on now in relationship to Palestine? It seems to me that there is a completely unnuanced conversation going on, that people are labeling, no, I really don't want children bombed and destroyed, to you're anti-Semitic. Those two positions can be held. You can actually care about Jews and you can care about Palestinians.
Yeah, there's kind of this conflating of a state and a government with a religion, and those are two separate things. And so one is a state actor and one is a religion. And so, and the people who are on the other side of this issue, in my opinion, tend to conflate the two. So that if you're criticizing the policy of the state of Israel, you're anti-Semitic. And so I just don't believe that's true. I think those are two separate things.
So it just seems to me that we've found a perfect storm of, I'm going to say stupidity, just because I'm tired and cranky. But it's like, the world is not a simple place. It's not. It's become a battle between slogans.
Yeah.
And human lives do not fit into slogans. For me, every child is all children. And how you can fail to look at the destruction of the lives of children and not say, stop, is beyond my imagining. So, if you have a position that in any way is supportive of Palestinians, you're going to take a lot of flack.
Yeah, but I'm also going to run an authentic campaign, because at the end of all of this, I need to look back and say, I did not waste a year. I stayed true to myself. I'm proud of what I did. My family's proud of what I did. Yeah. And to me, that's what success looks like, is I'm not compromising who I am, because that's ultimately what sets me apart and what gets people like you to vote for me, is I don't want to compromise that. The other kind of thing I'll say, too, is there are candidates in this race who say they care about climate and have not said anything about Palestine. And I am someone who believes that those two things are related, because military aggression is such a huge impact on CO2 emissions. And we saw that with the CO2 canisters used downtown in front of the federal building and all of that stuff going into the Willamette River. And we see it now with all of the bombing that's happening in Palestine. Is those you can't be pro climate and then also be silent on Palestine. To me, those are I I respect your opinion, but I that's not how I see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In pulling together the ceasefire resolution specifically for city council and mayoral candidates, it was so interesting the responses that I got back from people, because there were a subset of people, about a fourth, which I thought was pretty decent, that signed on to the resolution. But then there were another, I would say, fourth who were like, I really personally support this issue, and I feel like it has no place in local government. And it just broke my heart. And honestly, it has definitely changed the way I've interacted with those candidates, because I just don't feel like they're fully embodied in their own campaign and their own policies. I have a hard time trusting. Like, how are you separating your public identity from your personal identity, and why are those separate, and where are the boundaries, and how can I trust one or the other? And all of those questions came up to the forefront. And some of the people who did not sign on to the letter had previously made public statements about supporting the ceasefire, which I found strange. And others of them had, behind the scenes, been helping me a lot get this ceasefire resolution to the council, but refused to sign it. So it was very interesting to see where everyone's breaking points were.
Wow.
And there was a candidate who told me that, I prefer to donate to people who are working on this issue, but I don't want to come out in public support of it because I don't want to put people off, which I understand. But like you said, it's really important to be running this authentic campaign, and I really appreciate that you're staying true to that, because I feel like politics and power in general has the tendency to pull people off of that path.
What a strange game to play, to need to decide you need to split how you feel about an issue for your public persona.
Yeah. And I mean, I get it in the sense that, like, you as a public servant need to be representing your people, all of your people, and not just your own personal agendas. But I'm hearing that 66, maybe even 70% of Americans want a ceasefire. And so to not be calling for that feels like catering to,
it wouldn't be the first issue that the people are all on the same page on, and we still can't get things passed, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's very true.
There are reasons for that. I'll not say them lest I go conspiratorial.
Extractive economy, maybe?
Maybe something like that.
I'm trying very hard not to speak. For those of you listening, my lips are twitching, just so you know.
Aww. So, Timur, you've gestured at the climate and climate policies and your curiosities and passions there, but what for you are the biggest issues on that front for Portland?
I would start with housing, because, if people are living closer together, if we've made that legal through middle housing, through the zoning code, if we do that, then all of a sudden we're creating advocates for walking, biking, and transit, because now those people are living together. Next thing you know, a grocery store comes there because now it's profitable to serve that demand that has now occurred there. More people are riding transit, more people are walking, more people are biking, and those things are also financially critical for city budgets, because we don't have the ability to maintain the amount of assets that we have. And so that, like, for example, one fire station in downtown is serving tens of thousands of people, whereas one fire station way out in the boonies is not serving that same amount of people. So you're getting a better bang for your buck in terms of city assets and things like that. So housing is key. And then I'm proud of the stuff I've done related to walking, biking, and transit, both from an advocacy perspective on Oregon Walks, and then within city government of things like delivering Rose Lane projects, which are transit priority projects, either through transit signal priority or dedicated lanes or things like that, because that makes a big difference. One of the things they say, one of the biggest challenges to interrupting cycles of poverty is commute times. And so as a parent, if there is a signalized crosswalk across an arterial that has a red light that has cars stop, and now you trust that signal and you trust your kid, now all of a sudden you may not have to take your kid to school. You can trust that infrastructure for that kid to get to school. And all of a sudden, when you're talking about a 15-minute walk there and back each day, you might still want to do it, but you don't have to. And that is an hour of your day back to you. If that transit has dedicated lanes or transit signal priority, now all of a sudden that's 30 minutes out of your week that's saved. And when you add all that up, that's hours within a month, hours within a year. So looking at things like commute times. And so really we need to put our money where our values are. And so we need to, that's what we should be funding in terms of walking, biking, and transit. And having worked in the space, there is such a mismatch on where the dollars are going. It's these large mega highway projects, and yet the streets are crumbling, and because we don't have a replacement pipe, all of a sudden that street is staying closed for cars with a massive hole in it for 3 months. I'm thinking about 76th and Yamhill in Montevilla, that there was just like it's a street just opened up and they didn't have a pipe, so all of a sudden it's like 3 months. And yet why is this even happening when we have all the money we need? It's just kind of in the wrong places. So yeah, confessions of someone who's been in the transportation field for a decade.
Beautiful. One more controversial issue for you. So what's your stance on graffiti removal?
Hadn't thought about that. Okay, I'm going to give you my honest answer, and I'm going to kind of allow you to influence my opinion.
Okay.
So I am pro graffiti removal because I believe it affects with people's mental health and how they perceive a location. If it's planned or kind of part of a community-led effort, and like we want a mural here, great, no problem. But in terms of people just doing it on their own, it's like, that's my own personal thing. So feel free to offer a rebuttal.
Yeah, it's just been really interesting because as I've been hosting candidate meet and greets and meeting with constituents, it's a thing that comes up a lot. And I've found, so something very much influencing me is that you may be aware that Portland needs to cut its spending by $20 million. And there's a bunch of budget listening hearings about how to do that. And I found it really interesting that I recently discovered that we as a city spend $20 million on graffiti removal. And I'm like, so we could cut Portland Street Response, which we definitely don't want to do, or we could cut the Women's Self-Defense Program that the city helps fund, or we might consider alternative policies around graffiti.
I see. Yeah, so you're kind of highlighting, we don't have all the money in the world and we have to make choices.
Exactly.
I get it. Okay.
And as I've been talking to local artists, they're like, oh yeah, if it was more sanctioned that you could go and do street art on public spaces, then I would go cover up offensive graffiti. I would do that for the city. I would make beautiful paintings. I would draw butterflies everywhere. And other cities have already done similar sanctioned policies. And so I'm like, if we're truly here to keep Portland weird, why are we keeping Portland beige?
Yes.
Interesting. What comes to mind when you say that is the street seats. So think of the patios in the business districts that, so in 2018, there were 10 in the city of Portland. And when the pandemic hit, credit to PBOT, Portland Bureau of Transportation, all the people that worked there, they were quickly able to pivot where they had this need and it was the direction they wanted to go in terms of policy. So they basically made this like outlined permit that like you meet X, Y, and Z criteria, you're good to go. And so maybe that's a process that we can do of like, if there's unsanctioned graffiti, you're one of our kind of approved people that we work with that can kind of beautify some of these spaces, and et cetera, coming up with some sort of community involved program, how we're going to do it, and then kind of have the community address that in a way that doesn't require city funding. Yeah, sounds great. So
Great.
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's just
I hadn't
funny.
thought of that,
I mean, I think District 4 has a particular lens on some of these things, but yeah, it's been interesting that that's come up so often. I just had curiosity about where you were at on that.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I did not realize we spent $20 million on graffiti removal.
Wow.
Yeah, and what's so sad to me about that is that it's constant. It's a constant war. And it's like, what if we just let people express themselves? What if we just allow for this to be an organic, artistic process instead of trying to police it in ways that are like taking funds away from other really important public services?
Yeah, it was interesting at NC State, where I went to undergrad. They have this free expression tunnel, and that anyone can write anything. And you know, obviously things come up, hate messages, et cetera, and then how do you deal with those? And you know, one of the things you can do is put a Band-Aid over it and say, this is not reflective of our community. But just kind of thinking about some of those things, and then also just reflecting that, you know, I get some people don't want to see graffiti, and so having it kind of channelized of like, maybe we decorate signal boxes, and maybe we decorate something like that, because I mean, you go to other cities and some, like, literally every single traffic signal box is this beautiful art. And so how do we kind of unlock and unleash some of that talent? For sure. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Very cool. Love it. And then I guess another issue, we don't have a ton of time left, but that I would love to just hear you talk about a little bit is our houselessness crisis and what your thoughts are on that and what kind of community perspectives you're pulling in on that front as we're negotiating with the county and the state on all of these issues.
Yeah, great question. Okay, so I'm a proponent of, you know, spending money wisely, because when you work in local government, you realize you have to make policy choices. You don't have an unlimited amount of money. And so my thing is, how can we get the most bang for our buck, and how can we spend money in a way that's actually going to solve the problem? And so for me, that is unlocking middle housing, making sure we're getting our zoning code right, looking at height limits, looking at Portland Neighbors Welcome Inner East Side for All campaign, doing things like that, because that's unlocking more housing. It's ultimately what's going to solve homelessness. That, to me, is kind of foundational. At the same time, we can't really dismiss the quality of life issues that people are having. And so I think one of the things that I would like to see is Portland Street Response be equipped and able to address those kind of street level issues that are happening. I do believe that homelessness is part of a systems level issue and not like, oh, you were personally irresponsible and made bad choices. Like, I don't really buy into that narrative. So like a lot of things, it's balanced, but I'm not here to demonize people living on the street. And I'm focused on the policies and the budget decisions that are actually going to move the needle in addressing this. So.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And as I've been talking to nonprofit folks, directors looking at this houselessness crisis and doing the work on the ground, they've been telling me things like, your job as a city council person would be to make sure that you're setting the public expectations, because this is not a one-size-fits-all solution. This is not something that's going to happen overnight. We need to be addressing it on an individual level with individual people, with individual communities, and we need to have a variety of solutions for this, and you need to say that this is going to take time, because what's been happening is that as I was talking to I believe the director for Hygiene for All, so a third of the people living on the streets are swept every week. And so for the people trying to reach them to get services, they have to get to them within a week or they're going to get swept, like odds are, and then you can't find them, you can't connect them with services, you can't get them into programs. And then another third of the house's population is swept every 2 weeks. So there's just this continual displacement happening that prevents us from getting them any kind of care. And so when you talk and you hear housed constituents say, oh, I really don't like that there's people living under the bridge or whatever, what are you going to do about that? I'd really try to help them understand, like, okay, yes, I hear that that's uncomfortable for you and it's a temporary situation, but the alternative is just displacing them and putting them in someone else's neighborhood. And so if we can just, like you said, like in my backyard candidate, like if we can help educate people to say that, you know, this is an important temporary step and it's uncomfortable for them and for us, but we need to recognize that if we can't locate them, we can't get them help, and we can't break this cycle of poverty and houselessness.
We're shooting ourselves in the foot.
Absolutely.
If we're trying to help people, if you have one arm of government trying to help people get housed and then another arm of government sweeping them, then we're like literally wasting money.
Exactly.
And so it's just, it makes no sense. And so yeah, look at you with the
hardball questions.
Yes. Good.
I'm in the hot seat.
Just going off script here, but no, I think it's important for us all to be, like having these conversations with each other and just hearing from, because we're all tapped into a different group of people, and so spreading that knowledge around. And if you do get elected, then I want to know that you know these things, right?
And it's important for people to know, where do you stand on an issue. I may not agree with you, but you need to take a stand and define who you are and where you stand, because the public deserves that. I mean, you're asking to be voted into something. Who are you? What do you stand for? And so I'm not going to hide the ball. That's where I am on some of these things. And
love it. It.
We don't know how to talk to each other about these things, and at some point they got depersoned. I don't know when there's probably a better term for it, but now they're just trash. So I did not want the people sitting in this bastion of white privilege, in which I participate, to how did people become? No. They were born. They were children. They probably have children. Yes, we need to figure out the public health consequences of not investing in mental health and housing 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when this problem could have been. It's like, how do we get that conversation going? Because at the point that you no longer see homeless people as people, we're in such deep trouble.
Absolutely.
So, and it is intractable, and we want easy, fix it. I want it done, fix it. I don't like it, make it go away.
Right.
That's not how it took us decades to get in this mess. It'll take us at least one to get out of it.
We're going to have to feel our discomfort about it for a while first.
Yes. Yeah.
That is very difficult for us as people.
Yeah.
And I think, so back when Dignity Village, looks like 25 years ago, was sort of being this place out by, it eventually ended up by the airport. It was completely different. There wasn't a level of mental illness. There was social stigma, but nothing compared to what we see now. We have lost our humanity. We are so impoverished by our inability to have compassion. Because I do believe human beings are good. Every day we take a step in the right direction. Every day we spread this conversation as widely as we can. Every day. Will it be enough? I have no idea.
But isn't it cool that here we live in the land of theory a lot with this stuff and the emotions of it, but here we're getting connected to people who are putting themselves in a place where they can do the things. Like I don't, it's going to be a long time before I'm over the fact that you're putting in curbs and trees, like the things that I'll talk at a high level of just like vagaries of making spaces that are inviting, that create community, but like there are people doing it and that's important. And if we see that in each other, we have more hope, right? That our ideas of what we wish could be actually are.
So what is giving you hope right now? What is making you feel optimistic, whether personally, professionally, just you? How do you as a being right now feel hope?
I would point to my foster child that in the 3 months that he has been with us, we have seen a lot of progress for a child who is developmentally delayed. And I've been through a lot as well, just learning and navigating, but seeing this kind of new family member kind of grow and thrive it's been kind of neat, honestly. So, and kids, they have such a low barrier for laughter that like the tickles, the laughs, the play. I mean, I love being surrounded by kids because it just like, I see them playing in the playground and I literally feel the stress leaving my body because it's like they're just having a great time, and then whatever random, unimportant thing that I'm stressed about is just gone. Because in that moment, they are just so happy.
So like hanging out with Patty's 12 and 14-year-old has the same effect.
Yeah. So
It's been good for Jerry. I'm hungry.
yeah.
It's true.
So
Beautiful. Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any last things you would like to leave the listeners with about you or your campaign or what you're looking forward to?
Looking forward to this change in form of government and having representation in East Portland. That part is guaranteed. There will be 3 people representing East Portland. What's not guaranteed is whose values and whether your values are reflected. So my pitch to Portlanders would be, check out who's running in your district, look at their website, look at the people who are not running in your district but will have an impact on your city. Yeah. And participate in the small donor election program. Vote with your dollar before the November election. Talk to your friends. Host a virtual house party. Get engaged. Know how the ballot works. Rank all 6 choices. Ask your candidates questions. Where do you stand on an issue? Apply to be on an endorsement committee. Organizations like APANO, Asian Pacific Action Network of Oregon, all of these different organizations have endorsement committees, so participate on that to help kind of have a role in the endorsement process. So this is literally a once in generation election, and
absolutely,
yeah, it's just gonna it's just wild that I'm part of it. It's a huge privilege to be able to be in this space. And I would just be engaged because how this election turns out will affect clean air, clean water, whether there's bikeways on arterials, whether there's transit signal priority, whether there's bus shelters, whether there's shade in playgrounds, whether community centers are fully staffed with well-paid city employees, whether there's childcare accessible for workers, all of these things, and the built environment. And so a lot of the way we interact with the world, whether it's through transportation or housing or economic development, is affected by these sometimes invisible bureaucratic decisions. And this is one of many ways to impact that. And I'm a believer in John Lewis's quote that voting is the most important nonviolent tool we have, and it is a sacred tool, and we should use it. And if we're not going to use it, then be intentional. I'm not voting because of this reason, but you do have an option, and you have lots of great candidates running. So I don't think it's too much to ask for Portlanders to do a little bit of research to figure out who they want to be leading their city, because it's going to make a huge difference for generations to come.
Beautiful.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking your afternoon to spend with us here.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for hosting me. Really appreciate the conversations.
Absolutely.
Me too.
I really won't vote twice. I want to vote twice, but I know it's wrong.
Yeah. Luckily, it's almost an embarrassment of riches. We have a lot of great candidates running in every single district, and so, do some research. I think you'll be able to find 6 people in East Portland that you'll be proud to vote for. I hope you do.
No, of course I will.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on Speaking Truth to Goodness. It was a privilege to host Timur Ender and explore his extensive work and visionary proposals for Portland. Timur's commitment to participatory budgeting and his proactive approach in transforming downtown waterfront transportation are just glimpses of how he plans to reshape our city's landscape for the better. Timur's perspective as a foster parent and as a Middle Eastern candidate for the City Council enriches our understanding of what it means to serve and represent one of Portland's most diverse districts. His dedication to building healthy communities and fostering inclusive politics gives us hope for a more engaged and equitable future. Please engage with us by liking, commenting, and sharing this episode. Follow us on Instagram for more updates and behind-the-scenes content. Join us next time as we keep speaking truth to goodness, because goodness is all around.